All right, guys, welcome to our Unit 3. We are going to be looking at creating the U.S. government. And so a few of the things we're going to talk about are looking at some of the weaknesses in our first government that was created, what was wrong with it, looking at the Articles of Confederation, and then we're going to go into what happened when the Articles of Confederation failed, and how did we create our new government under the U.S. Constitution. So first of all, we have the colonists who have just ended the Revolutionary War, and they are needing to establish a new government. Well, there are a few things that they knew they didn't want, one of which was they didn't want a government that was too powerful, and they didn't want a king or queen. All right, and they were scared of the majority ruling, the majority meaning the wealthy. Okay, and so they wanted to create a limited government, restricting the power, staying away from a king. No to the king. So the first attempt they had at creating the government was the Articles of Confederation written by the Second Continental Congress. All right, and this had several good things to it, but also it had more weak things, more negative aspects to it. First of which, the government was way too weak. They had no way to protect the colonists, and they had no way to generate income at the national level. We only had one house in the Congress. All right, and by doing so, you could either have population or equal per state, and in this case, it was based on equal per state. So population didn't really factor in. A couple of good things that came out of the Articles of Confederation. One was the Treaty of Paris, and it ended the Revolutionary War and gave us the opportunity to be an independent country. Second good thing that came out was the Land Ordinance, and also the Northwest Ordinance. And one thing you need to note about it was it opened up the western lands, west of the Appalachian Mountains but east of the Ohio River. So now we have a new boundary. A few other problems that we encountered with the Articles is if we couldn't tax as a national government, how do we pay off war debts? And we definitely had those from the Revolutionary War. So who did that anger? It's going to anger the people because that's where we're going to get the money from. So Congress couldn't collect any taxes, and therefore the individual states had to collect more taxes to try to help pay for our national debt. In result, that's going to hurt our farmers because they're going to be paying out more for the crops and the land and the slaves that they have. It will also result in the states having to pay tax on imports from other states, and that's going to be hard on the South because they have no industry to create finished products. And then finally, just like John Locke's theory of natural rights, the people feared that if the government's not going to protect them, then they need to rebel. And that's exactly what we have. We get Shay's Rebellion. So how did Shay's Rebellion went down? We had the farmers in Massachusetts who were in an uproar about the taxes being imposed on them by the state of Massachusetts, and the banks were going to take the farmers' farms, and in result, the farmers rebelled, leading over 1,200 farmers to the government of Massachusetts to protest these taxes. But the most important piece here is that it showed that our government was too weak to protect the states. Looking at our cartoon here, we see the farmers, no taxes, no taxes. And then we see the government of Massachusetts asking for help, and then we have Congress, Second Continental Congress, saying, I'm sorry, can't help you. We don't have an army. I can't create one. I don't have any money, so I can't send any money your way to help alleviate the farmers. So we're left in a struggle. So the Articles of Confederation were failing. The rebellion failed. However, it sent the Founding Fathers back to the drawing board, and in 1787 they will meet at what we call the Constitutional Convention. Now, you may ask, how did they come up with a constitution, a document that is still in use today? Well, it wasn't that easy. All right, there was a few things that they had to address. When they went to the Constitutional Convention, that's not what they called it. They didn't know that they were going to be scrapping the whole articles. So the first issue that comes to mind was, how are we going to set up the national level? So we have the national level and then the state level. How do you make those work together? All right, so there's two plans. The first one was the Virginia plan. Virginia had way more, a way larger population than other smaller states. So James Madison proposed that we have three branches: an executive, judicial, and legislative. Then we have a two-house legislature known as, have it bicameral. But both of those were going to be based on population, and that really helped the big states. They'd have more population, and that it would represent the people. But the small states disagreed because they would always get the underhand. The other part was the New Jersey plan by William Patterson, and he proposed again the three branches, but let's have one house, and then that let each state have one vote in the House. Small states are happy and everyone gets equal representation. Well, the large states didn't like that. They felt that the people should be heard, and so if you had more population, you should be represented. So we come up with a compromise between the two. So in this grand fight, they come together and they choose the Connecticut plan, also known as Sherman's plan. All right, it called for three branches, which we still have today. And in our legislative branch, we're going to have two houses, bicameral, one of your big term words. The first house is the Senate, equal number per state, two per state. So today we have 100 senators, two per state with 50 states. And then we have the House of Representatives. That's based on population. So the more population you have, the more representatives you have. One of the biggest problems, though, was the issue of slavery. Do you count the slaves in the states? Three-fifths compromise was one of the alternatives that they came up with, not really looking at it as a moral issue. The three-fifths compromise said that three-fifths of the state's total slave population would count in determining representation. This made the South happy. It made the North happy on the extent that they didn't count the slaves 100%, but they'd only count three-fifths of the state slave population. So, in result, the three biggest concept areas to remember for this unit is the struggle between the strong national government and strong state government. If we have strong national government, authority comes from the people. If we have strong state governments, then the authority comes from each different state. If you have a stronger central government, then the central government needs to have more power than the state does, and that was a big argument. Argument number two, large states versus small states. Congress has two houses, that's what the large states want, and then Congress would have one house, that's what the small states want. One wanted based on population, that's the large states. One wanted equal per states, which were the small states. And then the last area of compromise is North versus South. All right. The North thought that we should not count the slaves in choosing representatives because we didn't count them as a citizen, therefore they should not be counted. However, the South thought that they should be counted so that they could increase their power in Congress. In regard to taxing, the North said, sure, if they're going to count, they need to count towards taxes as well. Although the South decided, no, for levying taxes, we should not count the slave population. So this also continued to divide the North and the South, which is going to continue to edge apart even further until we get to the Civil War in 1860. So this is a wrap-up of our constitutional compromises and conflicts. See you for the next session.